Let's talk about some foods and supplements that a lot of people think are healthy, but are not really healthy. So I'm going to expose them today and talk a little about them. A lot of the people call these particular foods health foods, but they're anything but, as you'll see. Probably the most common that come to mind are granola cereals, and granola bars. Granola cereals are touted for their health benefits because they contain supposedly whole grains, and they add sometimes a little bit of fruit, nuts, and various things that are normally considered quite healthy. But you see, the thing is, in fact, I got to say, I have to admit, for years, I used to favor eating natural, so-called natural granola cereals for breakfast. I would put a little bit of non-fat milk on there. Maybe sometimes I'd add a little bit of extra sweetener, like something like an envelope of stevia or something like that, just to make it even sweeter than it already was. And I ate this, and sometimes I'd follow it with a couple of eggs, and that was a typical breakfast, especially on the days that I didn't work out. I knew that the granola cereal was high in carbohydrates, but I never really took a close look at the ingredients until I was decided I wanted to drop some weight. And I changed my diet around quite a bit. I cut out a lot of excess calorie foods, no junk foods, that kind of thing, no processed sugars. But I left in the granola, and like I said, I would eat a kind of a large bowl of granola, pretty big serving of it, followed by some eggs. And what I didn't really think about, I didn't really think it through, but I was eating a combination of extremely high carbohydrate in the granola, because not only did it have the natural carbohydrate from, let's say, the grains, the grains and the fruit that was in the granola, but they also added stuff like cane sugar. I actually read the label one day because I wasn't losing weight like I thought. In fact, I was actually gaining weight, and I traced it to this granola eating with eggs, because when you eat rapidly absorbed form of carbohydrate with a concentrated fat, that is the most fattening combination you can consume. So one day I actually read the label of the granola cereal, and I was mind boggled. It was like loaded with carbohydrates. I mean, it had more carbohydrates than ice cream, pizza, all the stuff that I had cut out of my diet. It was right there in the granola, and it didn't have hardly any protein. It had a little bit of fiber, but it wasn't. It was really junk food, and it was disguised. For years, I was suckered into believing that it was fairly healthy too, because figuring, the whole grain, it's garbage. Granola is garbage, and so are granola bars. They're loaded with sugar, and they're extremely high calories. Check the label. Good example: a 2/3 cup portion of a brand called Nature Valley Oats and Dark Chocolate Protein Granola. It contains 7 grams of added sugar and 290 calories, while a Quaker Chewy Yogurt granola bar has 10 grams of added sugar. That's quite a bit. The daily recommended value for sugar is 50 grams for a person who consumes 2,000 calories a day. So that's already quite a bit of your sugar, your recommended daily intake for sugar. And you always want to limit sugar intake. As a matter of fact, I was telling a friend of mine the other day how this scientist was working with in longevity research. They often use a type of worm called C. elegans, because C. elegans, it's a little tiny, you can't even see it. It's a little tiny worm. But the thing is, it contains most of the same genes that are found in humans related to aging. They like to use C. elegans as a research subject because it has a very short lifespan, and they could see how different types of therapy, they can assess different types of a therapy in these worms. In other words, they could give them substances that maybe would lengthen their life, shorten their life. They could see how it affects the genes right away in the worms. They couldn't, for a human, you'd have to follow a human for 70 years or more. So the worms are a good subject. But anyway, the scientist was working with the worms, and she was looking at the various genes that control longevity and also stimulate mortality. So what she did is she withdrew all sugar from the worms' diet somehow. I'm not sure how they fed these worms, but she withdrew all sugar, and she was shocked to notice that one of the genes, which she had dubbed the death gene, was completely turned off. As soon as she withdrew sugar, this gene that stimulates death in the worms, the same gene also exists in humans, by the way, was completely turned off when she withdraws sugar. What the scientist did, I saw her say this in an interview, she immediately stopped eating sugar herself, cut out all refined sugar out of her diet, and cut her carbohydrate intake down to almost nothing, because she believes, and this is a very well-known, Judith Campisi is her name, she's a very well-known researcher who's been studying longevity for years. She thinks that eating sugar is one of the fastest aging foods that you can eat. So that's something to take into account. So you always want to minimize sugar. Sugar is related, of course, to obesity, fatty liver. Fatty liver is what they call it. There's an epidemic of fatty liver called non-alcoholic fatty liver, because usually in the past, most cases of fatty liver were related to too much alcohol intake. But now they know that there's a form of it you get just from eating too much sugar, not enough physical activity. Fructose, the sugar fructose, is especially associated with fatty liver. Sugar also probably causes more cases of cardiovascular disease than any amount of fat. Sugar is much more dangerous as far as cardiovascular. So forget about don't eat the kind of pre-made granola that you see in supermarkets and health food stores. If you want to have granola, make your own. You could buy different things and put in there. I guess you could make your own, and just don't add any sugar if that's what you want. You could use ingredients like nuts and oats, and you could add sweetness with a little bit of dried fruit, or like I say, little sweeteners like stevia you can put on them. But don't use commercial don't eat commercial granola. It's junk. It's just like eating candy. Same with granola bars. Absolute garbage. They are not health food stores. They're not health foods. Health foods. Another type of food that a lot of people think is healthy are flavored yogurts. However, if you look at the label of a lot of unflavored yogurt, you'll find that they contain a ton of sugar. There is some yogurts that are called keto yogurts that started because of the ketogenic diet craze. There's one that I know of, for example, that contains only 4 grams of carbohydrates per. Looks like it's about a 6-ounce container. That's not bad. I mean, if you're going to have flavored yogurt, go with that one. But if you get the regular yogurt, for example, a 5.3-ounce container of the typical yogurt, flavored yogurt, or let's say one that has strawberry in it, it can contain up to 15 grams of sugar in just that little container. Yogurts that have candy toppings and flip-style yogurts have even more sugar. They're loaded with sugar. So if you can have yogurt at all, make sure it's natural yogurt, unflavored yogurt, or if it's flavored yogurt, make sure it doesn't have any added sugar. Most, those yogurt stores that sell the yogurts, the frozen yogurt, that is not a health food store. That is not a I keep saying health food store because I'm used to saying health food store. But the type of yogurt you buy in the yogurt stores, the frozen yogurt, that's like eating candy. That has no health benefits whatsoever. A lot of people will say, I'm not going to eat ice cream, but I'll get a flavored yogurt. They're doing the same thing. There's no advantage to eating the frozen yogurt. It's just like it's like eating ice cream. It's like sugar. Another surprising food that people think is very healthy or health food are protein drinks and bars. Now this comes with a caveat. If you get a good solid, for example, isolated whey supplement, something like that, they almost never have added sugar. But some of the protein foods or protein drinks might have added sugar, especially if they're pre-made drinks. The ones that come in the can, you don't have to mix them, you drink them. Look on the label. A lot of times they add cane sugar. There's one that I looked at that had 4 different types of sugar, but it was expressed in different ways. Inverted sugar, fructose, cane sugar, and had one more sugar. 4 kinds of sugar. Each can had, I think, 45 grams of carbohydrate for a 12-ounce can. That's loaded with sugar. That is not healthy. That amount of sugar completely overrules the protein content of the drink. Keep away from that. Read the label. Make sure that it doesn't have, the protein drinks don't have artificial colors, added oils, or thickeners. You don't need any of that stuff. It makes it junk. Sports drinks and energy beverages are often considered healthy. Again, it depends. It depends on the ingredients. If these energy drinks have added sugar or artificial colors or have too much caffeine, they're not health foods. I mean, caffeine's not bad, but a lot of these people will drink like Red Bull or some of these things. They'll drink like 6 cans, and at that point they're getting too much caffeine. It's certainly not healthy to have that much caffeine in a short amount of time. When you drink coffee, I know the way I drink coffee, I kind of sip it. It'll take me, let's say, a half hour or more to drink a single cup of coffee. If you drink coffee like that, you give your liver and your body a chance to metabolize the caffeine. So while it still acts as a stimulant, it doesn't hit you like a ton of bricks. And in other words, if you take in something like a sports drink that contains a lot of caffeine all at once, it becomes almost like a drug effect. It's too stimulating. It can stimulate your heart. It can cause minor heart rhythm disturbances. Just tangential to this, they're now coming out with supplements. Turns out that caffeine is converted in the body to a substance called paroxine, which is actually a tremendous brain stimulant, and they're just now starting to put in supplement form. They're labeling it like a smart nutrient or a smart drug. But the truth is, you can get plenty of that stuff just by drinking a cup of coffee. This paroxine supplements will probably cost a fortune, probably 20 times as much as drinking a cup of coffee. So forget that crap. Just wanted to throw it in. By the way, talking about the sugar in a sports beverage, a 20-ounce bottle of fruit punch Gatorade contains 34 grams of added sugar. It's garbage. It is not a health food in any way. You've probably heard of Monster Energy drink. It's another popular drink. That contains 54 grams of sugar in a 16-ounce can. That's huge amount of sugar. It's like pouring teaspoons of sugar in your mouth. Garbage. Gluten-free snack foods. That's another one. People think, well, it's gluten-free. It must be healthy. No, not really, because what they do is they add a lot of sugar, and these snack foods, they're low in protein, they're low in fiber, and they hardly have any vitamins and minerals. They're not healthy at all. Low fat and fat-free products. There's this paranoia about fat. I've talked about this in other videos. I mean, people worry about fat being dangerous, saturated fat, and it's going to cause cardiovascular disease. So what they did over the years is they kind of took a lot of the fat out of popular foods, and what they did is they substituted sugar. So what they did, in other words, you actually get fatter eating these so-called low-fat foods because they had so much added sugar. They basically replaced the fat with sugar, which is garbage. Again, it makes it would actually be healthier if it still contained the original fat content. So be careful of low-fat and fat-free products, again, because they substitute sugar for fat. No good. Besides granola, most breakfast cereals are, not really healthy. They're made with refined grains that lack fiber. They very low in protein. They also can add a lot of sugar. Some of them add sodium. For example, there's one called Honey Nut Cheerios. It's the advertising for it calls it heart healthy. It actually contains 12 grams of sugar per cup, and it's not being high in sugar. Anything high in sugar is not heart healthy. Like I say, sugar is the actual biggest culprit for causing cardiovascular disease. Not fat like most people think. It's sugar. So having high blood sugar is linked to increased risk of heart disease, and also stimulates prediabetes, diabetes. High sugar elevates blood triglyceride levels, which is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. I think most people know by now that vegetable oils, and there's been a lot of publicity about this, vegetables are not as healthy as they have often portrayed to be. I mean, there's 2 types of essential fat. Omega-6 fat, represented by linoleic acid, that's the essential fatty acid. And it's found in vegetable oils. And the other type of essential fat is omega-3 fats like EPA and DHA found in fish oil and fatty fish. The problem is that omega-6, the amount of omega-6 that people eat, because vegetable oils are ubiquitous. I mean, check food labels. They're found in so many foods, and people eat them separately. They consume it separately. So you have a terrible imbalance between omega-6 and omega-3. In fact, modern day diets have a ratio of 20 to 1 in favor of omega-6 over omega-3. The ideal ratio should actually be no greater than 4 to 1, meaning omega-6 to omega-3, with ideal being 1 to 1. In other words, equal amounts of, you do have to have some linoleic acid or omega-6 because it is essential, but you don't need that much. It's not that much. Some people, it's been written quite often that an excess omega-6 fats, such as linoleic acid or as found in vegetable oils, is very inflammatory. It causes a lot of inflammatory problems in the body. I'm going to write an article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter because while that's true to a certain extent, it's been greatly exaggerated. The notion that omega-6 fatty acids, such as linoleic acid, are extremely inflammatory is wrong. It's fallacious. You still read it all over the internet. They have all these articles. Omega-6 is very not true. I will explain why. It's very complicated, but I'll explain in simple terms in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. Typical foods that are high in omega-6 include again, vegetable oils, soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil. A lot of the products, you'll see a lot of processed prepackaged foods that contain those oils. Avoid them, because it's all too much. Good sources of omega-3 include flaxseed oil. However, flaxseed oil contains 57% alpha-linoleic acid, or ALA. ALA is what's called the essential omega-3 fatty acid only because it's found in a greater abundance of foods compared to the preformed omega-3 fatty acids, which is EPA and DHA, are found in very few foods, mainly fatty fish. So to make it easy, the government actually declared alpha-linoleic acid, or ALA, to be the essential omega-3. But in fact, it's only a precursor for the active omega-3, which is EPA and DHA. And you get EPA and DHA from fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, halibut, sardines, that type of fatty fish. So flaxseed oil is only a precursor. Do not depend on it as a source of omega-3. Walnuts are often talked about being high in omega-3. Again, the source of omega-3 in walnuts is alpha-linoleic acid. Only the human body can only convert 1 to 2% of alpha-linoleic acid into the active omega-3 fatty acids, which is EPA and DHA. Diet sodas are often, I don't know if people call it a health food, but I think it's been chastised a little bit too much. A lot of people will talk about how dangerous diet soda is. The truth of the matter is the most dangerous thing about diet soda, as I pointed out in another video, it's not the artificial sweeteners. It's more related to some of the colorings they use, like these caramel colorings they use in Diet Coke. But the biggest problem with diet soda is that some of them contain phosphoric acid, which is a form of phosphorus. So if you drink for example, if you drink too many diet sodas, particularly colas, like Diet Coke, that kind of stuff, that contain phosphoric acid, you could wind up getting a mineral imbalance where you're getting too much phosphorus, especially if you don't eat dairy foods, which contain a reliable source of calcium. So a person who, for example, doesn't want to eat dairy foods like cheese and milk, but likes to drink Diet Coke, could be in danger of having a mineral imbalance where they're getting too much phosphorus, and they could get really serious medical problems because they're not getting enough calcium. It can actually adversely affect the heart. It can affect muscle function because calcium is needed for muscle contraction. So again, the worst thing about diet sodas is the phosphoric acid, and also it has a slight effect on kind of rotting your teeth if you drink too much too. Now, I did an article in my Applied Metabolics. A friend of mine, I'm trying to gradually become a vegan. I cut out red meat about 3 years ago when I had diverticulitis, because red meat is considered a minor risk factor for diverticulitis. I don't want to get it again. It was a horrible experience. I was in the hospital for 10 days and lost 24 pounds. Went down to my contest body weight. I was the lowest body weight I was in years. Unfortunately, the weight I lost was almost 98% muscle, which is not good. Not good at all. It took me 6 months to gain even 50% of the muscle back. But the point is that that's when I cut out red meat. And a friend of mine, I said, I got to have some protein. I can't live on plants alone. I just can't do it. I don't have an appetite for them. So they suggested these meat substitutes. I didn't know much about them, so I researched them. The various Beyond Meat. They come through. You'll see them in the supermarkets. They look like beef, and they supposedly, my friend said, it tastes exactly like beef. You won't even know the difference. And that might be true. But when I looked at the ingredients and when I did the research, I decided not to eat that stuff, because a lot of them contain processed ingredients. Some of them are loaded with salt. Some of them have added sugar. This is not found in natural meat. A lot of these plant-based meat substitutes, if you look at the ingredients, read my article on Applied Metabolics. Can't go into it here. I did an entire article on some of the ingredients and why they're problematic that are in these so-called plant-based meat products. Check out my article you'll be shocked. I mean, this stuff is not healthy. A lot of people think they are. I already talked about frozen yogurt. Frozen yogurt is just it's junk. It's just disguised ice cream, and it's not even as tasty as ice cream. Don't even bother with it. Yogurt-covered pretzels and raisins, just sugar. It's all sugar, loaded with sugar. A ton of sugar on that stuff. Plant-based milks. A lot of people won't drink dairy milk, but they prefer the plant-based milk, almond milk, and all that stuff. Unfortunately, some of these plant-based milks, they also have added sugar. For example, there's one particular almond milk. If you look at the label, it contains 7 grams of added sugar for each 1 cup serving. And as I said in a previous video, if you want to see how much of any ingredient is in any food product, the FDA decrees that the contents or the ingredients be listed in order of content. So, in other words, the first content, the first ingredient on any food label, that's the majority of what's in the food. Now, in almond milk, a lot of them, you'll see cane sugar listed as the second ingredient. And that means that this stuff has a ton of cane sugar, loaded with sugar. If you're going to drink these plant-based milks or nut-based milk, look for ones that don't contain added sugar. So, there's other foods I can go into, but I think these are some of the more common ones. As a for general advice, I'd say be aware. If you're not sure of something, read the label. Read the label. If you're a subscriber to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, or you've watched some of my prior videos where I've talked about how to read food labels, you'll know what to look for. There's, as I said, sugar is often disguised under various names: inverted sugar, maltose, fructose, dextrose. These are all sugars. I mean, some of these products, as I said, I've seen products that contain 8 different types of sugar, and it's all processed, refined sugar. None of it's refined, none of it's natural sugar. Now, somebody might say, oh, wait a minute, fructose is a natural sugar, isn't it? Yes, it is. However, a lot of these foods, rather than contain natural fructose, they'll contain what is it called? High fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is a processed form of fructose. Now, interestingly enough, high fructose corn syrup contains the same ratio of sugars as table sugar or sucrose. But the difference between the two is that sucrose is a more natural sugar, where it's considered in biochemistry, they call it a disaccharide, meaning it's 2 single sugars bonded together. This is sucrose. And the key word being bonded. They're bonded. And with high fructose corn syrup, the same sugars are in that, but they're not bonded. They're in a free state. And what that means is they hit you much faster. I mean, boom! It's super refined, and because of that, it's not that it causes a huge insulin release. The problem with high fructose corn syrup is it tends to stimulate body fat rapidly, especially in the liver. In fact, some people think a consumption of high fructose corn syrup, again, a refined carbohydrate, is one of the things that are responsible for the current epidemic of non-alcoholic fatty liver. So that's something to take into account. So anyway, that's about it. I see I'm up to the past the 25-minute mark. I always aim for 18 to 20 minutes, since that's scientific studies show that the maximum human attention span for videos peaks at 18 to 20 minutes. So what happens after that? After that, the mind starts to wander. In other words, you might think you're listening, but you're not. You don't have the full focus. And most people, they're not completely focused. I think everyone watching this will agree. If you watch some of those 1 hour or 2 hour or 3 hour videos, you're not, after about a certain amount of time, you're not really listening with your full 100% concentration. That's just the way the human brain works. There's no way of avoiding that, unless you do it in chunks. If you take a 3-hour video and watch, 15 minutes at a time, that you can get away with. But if you try and sit down and watch these extra long videos, forget it. It's not gonna sink in. You're gonna think you're listening, but you're not. It's not getting into the brain. So I'm gonna stop it here. Just tell you, if you want more information on nutrition, exercise science, hormonal therapy, anti-aging research you can use today, fat loss techniques that really work, ergogenic aids, hormonal therapy, women's health and fitness. I cover stuff for women. Women, important. There's a lot of things that affect women that don't affect men. I cover that in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. In fact, I cover more topics in my Applied Metabolics newsletter than any other digital newsletter on the entire internet. Nobody covers as many topics as I do. A lot of it's based on my almost 60 years of empirical and academic experience. I've been studying this stuff since I was a little kid, and I retain most of what I've learned. I also have a lot of experience in the trenches, in the gym. I've been working out for 58 years. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. I've tried everything. I know all about the diets that work and don't work. All of this is relayed in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. As a professional writer, I know how to write for the public. I don't make it overly technical, and if anything is technical, I will explain it so you don't have to reach for a medical dictionary. Everything is in plain English. There's no ads. I'm not trying to push any products. You're really missing out. I'm serious. I know this. I know it's hard. Somebody said, "Well, I'm not being objective because it's my publication." But trust me, ask anyone who's subscribed. That it's extremely in depth, far more in depth than any video or podcast could ever possibly be. And no matter what your level of learning or experience, you will learn something in every issue of Applied Metabolics. I absolutely guarantee that. So subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you subscribe, I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on exercise science, nutrition, general medicine, and health. I also have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics website. We're current subscribers only. I don't accept unsolicited questions. You can ask me short questions about anything that they might have read in Applied Metabolics, or any question that comes to mind, as long as they're short questions. If you have an abundance of questions, then you could do a personal consult with me for a fee. That's a different situation. Of course, you can also leave comments under these videos, particularly if you have any suggestions for future videos. I'm open to that, as long as the suggestions will interest a large number of people. I've had some crazy suggestions since I started doing these videos that are very kind of weird. That they might be interesting, but I don't think a lot of people would be interested in knowing about this. Such as drinking urine and that kind of crap. So people, I'm not going to talk about that stuff. Maybe some people do that, but not enough interest. So again, subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. Thank you for listening. It's, again, a little bit of extension in this video, a little extended video, I should say. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. And by the way, speaking of dogs, as I said in a past video, if those of you who do have dogs, if you want your dogs to live a longer and healthy life, also check the dog food labels. A lot of dog foods, unfortunately, commercial dog foods have really crappy ingredients like animal byproducts. They throw in all kinds of junk in there, and don't think that your dogs can eat this with impunity. It will eventually ruin the dog's health. A lot of these things will cause cancer in dogs, and cancer is the #1 killer of dogs. Whereas cardiovascular disease is in humans, in dogs the #1 killer is cancer. So you want to do everything you can to help prevent cancer if you love your dog. So check your dog food labels. Try and stick with all natural stuff, all natural dog foods. Avoid the dog foods that also contain a lot of sugar. A lot of sugar is not good for dogs either. Also avoid any processed fats that are in the dog foods. So I'll leave it at that. And I know I've talked a long time, so thank you if you've gotten this far. I appreciate your listening. Take care.